بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء. Yesterday we opened up a kind of discussion about the third important role that we can assume and expect from prophets to be covered. Is my voice clear right now? Okay. So I came up through 4 main verses of Holy Quran that accordingly the responsibility of the teaching of different nations has been put upon the shoulder of prophets. So I have recited those 4 verses to you, having a specific phrase which was common among all these verses. So mostly we face this common phrase to be Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, whether in chapter Baqarah or in chapter Al-Imran or in chapter Jum'ah. يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِكَ or وَيَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِهِ or وَيَتْلُو عَلَيْكُمْ آيَاتِنَا. The different pronouns, but at the same time the meaning is still the same. يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِكَ وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ. To remind you of the manifest proofs of God first. Second, يُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ, to teach them book. وَالْحِكْمَةَ, wisdom. And number 4 is that وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ, to purify them. I told you that today I will cover these 4 main aspects that we will find important in these verses. What are these 4 aspects? First, remind you of manifest proofs of God. Second, يُعَلِّمُهُمْ, teach them, book. Third, teach them wisdom. And fourth, يُزَكِّيهُم. يُزَكِّيهُم or يُزَكِّيكُم or different, of course. Zakihim or yuzakikum, purify them. So these 4 are very important mainly. So having a kind of chronological address here and then attention to this specific verse, we would be able to understand that, well, okay, if I want to teach someone first, I have to remind them of the truth that do exist in this world. I don't know how many of you have delved actually into the arguments and demonstrations that we do have for the existence of God in the school or maybe later on in your own researches. Mainly, I remember my own books when I was doing high school or elementary. We did have a lesson called Aqaid or theology. So when the book wanted to give it a try, proving the existence of God, they started in a very beautiful way, I assume. So something that I had experienced in my life. So they started with the arguments of the order, or Burhanun Nazm as we call it. Okay, talking about the universe, the complications of this universe, the orderly system of this universe, how magnificently this world has been orchestrated. Okay, so everything works and functions in its proper time and place. So it shows the order of this world that it should have, and it must have actually, the planner, the programmer of this order. So order needs the orderer, let's say, okay? So this is something very common. This is something that mostly we start with, okay? So I should have witnessed all those magnificent verses and proofs and evidences in this world so that that argument would mean something to me. Okay, I can fully understand it. So this is exactly what we will find in the works of the prophets, alayhim as-salam. That, okay, recite the salawat if you want. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin. That people should be aware of something first. What are we talking about? Okay, I have to know what is this teaching about. So there are manifest proofs of God that already people witnessed. So timely speaking, the work and the function and the responsibility of the prophets was to remind you of already what you have had in your life, what already you have experienced. So that is why yatlu alayhim ayatana. Okay, so first we have to remind you of what already exists. And then we do have some important points as well that maybe before going to second, third, and fourth aspect of these verses I have to tell you a little bit about, is that when we refer to another verse of Holy Quran, we will find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned to Prophet Luqman, or some mufassirin, some interpreters, they assume him to be prophet, some others they will assume him not to be prophet, or at least he was a wise person, okay? Luqman al-Hakim, so this is mostly what matters to us. He was actually a very noble person, okay, from a good understanding. The ones that they deserve to be called ulul albab, means having a great intellect, okay? Now, we'll find that this Luqman, in the verse that we do have in chapter Luqman, verse 12, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned about him, وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا لُقْمَانَ الْحِكْمَةِ أَنِ اشْكُرْ لِلَّهِ وَمَنْ يَشْكُرْ فَإِنَّمَا يَشْكُرُ لِنَفْسِهِ وَمَنْ كَفَرْ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَنِيٌّ حَمِيدٌ. So, again, the word which is important for us is hikmah. So Luqman has been facilitated and has been utilized with something which was very important, and that thing was hikmah, wisdom, that made Luqman to be a perfect person, to be a completely distinguished person from the rest of the society. Although if you go and read the history of Luqman, he was a black slave in the beginning. Some said that Luqman was from Sudan. He was actually a person who was completely inferior, who was completely belittled in the society. And then he was a slave to another person. And then it is something outstanding to find this black person to be identified at the end of the day to be a wise person among the intellectuals of the society. Okay? So it means that you have to show your personality in a way that will convince others, let's say white people of your own society, that you have this personality to be respected among whites, although you are not white. Okay? So it needs, of course, a high intention, I would call it. So Luqman was actually a slave, a black slave to a person. And then he has been facilitated with hikmah. What happened that he has been facilitated with hikmah? So I will tell you the story that happened between him and his master, his Lord, let's say, okay? So that made him very unique. It has been mentioned that once Luqman, recite the salawat, please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Was being suffered a lot from the position of his master. Why? Because his master had enough money, enough wealth, with no any serious problem in his life, but at the same time he was so sensitive. A very tiny problem and difficulty would make that master to be really hesitated, to be really moved by those hardships and problems. some of us are really sensitive toward the hardships and difficulties of this life. We're not enduring enough. We are not tolerant enough. We're not patient enough. As soon as we'll face a problem, we start yelling, we start screaming, we start sometimes annoying ourselves, sometimes pushing ourselves toward more severe, of course, problem and then position. So these are all the stages that we sometimes unintentionally irritate ourselves. Okay, so that master was in this status, having the same personality. So Luqman was being suffered a lot, visiting and viewing his master to be suffered in this way, although everything was good about his life. Not very serious problem. So what happened one day that one of our brothers that he liked, that watermelon, is not here, but then the master has been gifted by a watermelon. And then because Luqman was a very good slave to him, so he presented that watermelon to him, dividing into pieces, giving him, of course, the early pieces of that watermelon. So Luqman was patiently also eating the pieces, thanking his master for this generosity. But at the end, the last piece remained, so the master also started eating that piece, and then he found that the watermelon is totally bitter, disgusting. And then he was amazed, at the same time surprised, and then asked Luqman, why you were just eating all the pieces without saying anything, that this watermelon is bitter and it's disgusting, why you're just eating it? And the very wise answer of Luqman, we can witness here, he has mentioned that I have been given in your house so many times sweet gifts, meals, foods, something that were perfect to me. Just only this time, it is not respectful to blame you out of just one bitter difficulty and hardship. So out of this wise answer of Luqman, the master also reminded his own status that so much is the case with God. God has been given always me different gifts, sweets, and then of course prosperity in my life. But then some few hardships, I will start to be impatient. Okay. So Luqman was a person like this. And out of his intellect and wisdom, he came to be recognized and identified as a very elite of his own society. Okay. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has addressed Luqman as the role model for every one of us in this world. As mentioned, لَقَدْ آتَيْنَا لُقْمَانَ الْحِكْمَةِ. So we have given Luqman this wisdom. What is this wisdom about? What does it mean? أَنِ اشْكُرْ لِلَّهِ. To thank God. So one of the meanings of, one of the examples, clear examples and instances of wisdom is to be thankful to God. Okay, to remind the gifts and presence of God that we have been bestowed with. So, what does it mean, this shukr? What is this thankfulness? Saying that Alhamdulillah is enough? Recite the salawat to tell you. Allahumma salli ala. So what is the real shukr? What is important behind shukr that has been exemplified as a wisdom? Okay, so if I want to be wise, I have to be thankful to God. Why? So shukr means, if I want to come up with the true shukr to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, thankfulness means that, well, I have to put everything in its own place. Means that first I have to know God. So these are the fundamental principles for coming up with good thankfulness. Means that first I have to know God. Second, I have to know that these are the gifts of God. Second condition. And the third condition is that I have to utilize, or I have to use, or I have to consume these gifts of God in the best way that should be manifested as the signs of the donor of these gifts. Okay, so that would be a practical shukr. So sometimes we come up with the verbal shukr to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, alhamdulillah, and that is enough. We've been thankful. But if you want to exercise the thankfulness practically, you have to already implement these three conditions. First, you have to know God. Second, you have to know that all gifts are being derived from God. And third, how to use them so that they would be a clear manifest of God. But this is very important. Sometimes I will give my child a huge amount of money. So my child, if he wants to be thankful to me, first he has to know me. What's the concept of father? What's the concept of giving me money? Second, he should know that this money is mine, not his. And third, how to use this money. Sometimes children, you will give them millions of dollars. They don't know how to use that money. Okay? So if that money is to be used in a perfect way that I myself am interested in, so that would be a practical thankfulness to me. So if God is going to give me different gifts in this world, if I'm going, or if I'm about to use them in another way that I have been prescribed, so that is not anymore the thankfulness to God. So that is why Luqman was being called to be Hakim. Because first, he knew God. Second, he knew that all these gifts are from God. And who is the donor of these gifts? And third, how I'm supposed to use them. What are the applications or instructions that needed for every product? So that instruction is needed so that I will be informed how to use this. What is the perfect way to use these gifts? Okay? So that is why Luqman was being called as Hakim. And that is why in another verse Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned that whoever has been given wisdom, it's so much like that he has been given khayrul kathir. This is the verse that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned in chapter Baqarah. يُؤْتِ الْحِكْمَةَ مَنْ يَشَاءُ وَمَنْ يُؤْتَ الْحِكْمَةَ فَقَدْ أُوتِيَ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا وَمَا يَذَّكَّرُ إِلَّا أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ. Whoever has been given means first Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give wisdom. And second, whoever has been given this wisdom is so much like that he has been facilitated and given a khayrul kathir, much goodness. What is the limit of this much goodness? We don't know. وَمَا يَذَّكَّرُ إِلَّا أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ. These are just the people of intellect that they can understand what is the treasure of this wisdom. So anyhow, let us refer to those verses that yesterday I told you. The question was that, okay, prophets are teachers. And then what do they teach? Kitab, book, and second, wisdom. So the difference between prophets and us is that prophets are to be given the wisdom. So I was reflecting on the different verses of Quran. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to say that, okay, I have given the prophets wisdom, hardly ever he uses the verb teaching. Means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not to teach prophets wisdom, but he is to give them. Okay, so the wisdom completely would be given constantly and in one stance to the prophets. So they will be facilitated with. But for us, the word that has been used is teaching. Means prophets that has been given this gift, they are going to teach us gradually. This is also a difference between the teaching of the prophets and teaching of us first, and also the wisdom of the prophets and wisdom of people other than the prophets. And the last point is that in some verses it has been mentioned, first we have to be taught, and then later consequently we are to be purified. or we should be purified first and then later to be taught. First, يزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة, or يعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة ويزكيهم. We do have both in these verses. So, just quickly telling you the response and answer to this question is that, well, naturally, and then in reality, first we have to be taught. Prophets should teach us first, and then after those teaching that we have received from the prophets, we are able to purify ourselves. So naturally, this is the process. First, I have to let you know the reality, and then later on, you are able to purify yourself. Isn't it the case? Without any knowledge, how you are able to purify yourself. Okay? So in reality, prophets should teach me first, and then later on expect me to purify myself. What is the reality? In one verse, we had exactly this natural sequence, like that. In chapter Baqarah, when Holy Prophet Ibrahim was praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he has mentioned يُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ. This is the natural process. يُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ first, and then يُزَكِّيهِمْ. But then why? It has been reversed. These sequential consequences has been completely reversed in other verses. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, for example, وَيُزَكِّيكُمْ وَيُعَلِّمُكُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ. Again, يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِهِ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ. The reason and short response to that is, well, the priority between ta'lim, teaching, and tazkiyah, purification, is tazkiyah. Purification is more important than ta'lim. Ta'lim is a tool for us to understand how to purify ourselves. Okay? If we are going to school, if we are studying, if we are going to university, if we are going to seminary, if I'm a cleric, if I will study for 10, 15 years, if Shaykh Mazen will study for more than 20 years, so the very teaching is something, but the purpose of the teaching and studying, and educating is something else. That tarbiyah is what matters. That tazkiyah is what matters. So based on these instructions that already I have received, I will be able, so this is actually, presumably, let's say, at least the expectation of some clerics like me is higher than you, because I've been educated. Now I have the facility to purify myself. So if you expect me more than you, you're right in this, let's say, in this respect. Just because I have been learned. And then يُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ. Inshallah, we shall discuss the teaching of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam more. Sorry, I know that. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Wa sallallahu ala